Hi, this is the lower body flexibility focused on some hip opening movements as requested. So you're going to come down, you're on your back foot, you reach that leg forwards, and then you're just sinking down. You can bring your hands up if you want to try to get that lunge a little bit deeper. So that will center more of your weight in this position. But it's also totally right if you're struggling to get into that hip space to just have your hands here and press into it to keep yourself nice and upright. The goal is to try to push this hip forwards. So you're just going to hold in that bottom position where you're feeling that nice stretch. Breathing, making sure you can contract this hip still. So if you go too far that you can't squeeze that hip, that means you're too far in that stretch. You want to come back, tighten a little bit more, and then try to really push into that tension in that hip here. Next up is a pigeon stretch. So I like to get into that from the lunge and then just kind of come down with my leg. So there's a few different ways to get into that, but the way I like, you're up in the lunge, you walk the foot over, plant the hand, and then just drop down into your pigeon. So in this position, you still got that back leg extended. Oh, and for the low lunge, you want to do both sides. Sorry. Obviously, both sides hold for about 30 seconds. Pigeon, you're here. You want to try and keep that front leg nice and square. And then you bring yourself up. So, in the upwards pigeon, the goal is to kind of get this hip down to the ground. So you're stretching that back hip and the front hip at the same time. So as opposed to some of the more, if pigeons you might be familiar with where you try and bring yourself down, that doesn't really stretch your back hip at all. Really hits the front one. So you can play around with both options. But trying to get this upwards one will let you really get into your hip flexors. So holding that for 30 seconds and then switching sides. You want to make sure you get both sides. I like to always start with the side that is tighter. You don't have to, but it's just a nice thing to do when you're doing unilateral work. Next up is the figure four. Again, really working on that hip opening and that external rotation. So, cross the foot. You're going to have your ankle above your knee. Above your ankle on your knee. Sorry. Grab through the leg behind your knee. And then you just gently pull in, trying to keep your pelvis squared and on the ground, so you don't want to allow yourself to tilt as you're pulling. So getting into that nice stretching position. Hold for about 30 seconds, switch sides, pull into that nice stretch. And the last one is the diamond pose. So you're laying flat on the ground, put the soles of your feet together. Start pretty far away, let them sink down, feeling that nice groin stretch. If that feels pretty easy, you can come in a little bit closer. The goal is to make sure you can leave your pelvis on the ground and your low back on the ground. So if you go too far and you try to force that, your low back will arch off. So you want to make sure you can get it nice and comfortable, and then you just let your legs sink. Holding for about 30 seconds. And you can go through this a couple times, or you can go through each movement a couple times. You want to try to get at least 2 of them for each one, so totaling up to a minute. And that is it for the lower body flexibility portion. Enjoy.